Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about The Last Dance episodes 1 and 2. I want to do this every single Monday because I have a lot of thoughts about these episodes and where this documentary is going, how it's made, some of the things that are covered in it. And so I want to do this every Monday, just kind of share my thoughts with you guys. Obviously, if you haven't seen it yet, this is going to include spoilers. So if you want to watch it first, then be sure to do that because I will be talking about the entire 2-episode premiere. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. Okay, so the first main theme that came about in these 2 episodes, specifically the beginning of the first one, is former Bulls GM Jerry Krause. And I had read and I had heard that he was going to be a relatively big part of the documentary, especially in the beginning. And there were kind of some mixed feelings about that because he passed away in 2017. And it, feels kind of wrong to kind of vilify a guy now a handful of years later after he passed away. But it's part of the story that needs to be told, right? Because some of the stuff that happened with this team, specifically going into this final season, this Last Dance, is pretty incredible, and a lot of it does have to do with Jerry Krause. And I will give him credit as much as possible throughout this and throughout all the other episodes that we cover as a true architect of multiple championship winning teams. But there are also definitely some mistakes made, like I said, going into the season. And it's just incredible to put yourself in this mindset and think about if this had happened in 2020, right? In this age that we live in with social media and things like that. Before this final season even started, Jerry Krause, in an interview, it wasn't like he said it privately and it was rumored. He outwardly said, this is going to be Phil Jackson's last season. And he said that before the season even started. It was a bit of a fight to even get Phil Jackson to come back for that season in the first place. And it just kind of sets up all this tension around the team. And again, it's just kind of crazy. I mean, this is a guy that we now know as one of the best basketball coaches of all time, won tons and tons of championships, and even at the time had won 5, which is much less than what he ended up winning for his entire career. And you're just going to tell that guy, no, it's okay, we don't need you anymore. You're going to go ahead and move on to a different team. It's just so bizarre. And again, thinking about what that would look like in 2020, there would be a riot on Twitter if that's what had happened. And that moves us into this other part of the beginning of the documentary that I found really interesting. And it's cuts of their post-championship winning press conference from the season before. I guess that would be 97. The season before The Last Dance, they win the championship. And in the press conference, they're talking about, is Phil going to come back? MJ, is this your last year? Are you going to come back next year? Scottie saying, I have options to go elsewhere because I'm not being compensated and paid properly. And this is right after they just won a championship. And it's incredible to me how much, how openly these things are talked about, and it's a different age, it's a different context, but it was crazy to see those kinds of things. And so I would expect that this kind of vilification of Jerry Krause is going to continue throughout the next couple parts of the documentary because it's going to lead to, the demolition of this championship core and all the different things that happen with the Bulls moving forward. And again, it's just weird to look back on these things now. I mean, you have a GM that, was the engineer of 5 championship winning teams and obviously, had some issues with the players and things like that. But when they go to receive their 5th rings, he's booed as he walks out. Obviously, all the players are the heroes in the eyes of the fans. But when the GM walks out, he's booed. It's just such a strange thing to see, right? And there's multiple parts as well where the players, specifically MJ, are kind of berating Krause about his size and things like that. It was not the most professional environment, and again, something that there's just no way it would have lasted in 2020. There'd be all these rumors coming out about how much the players hate the GM and the organizational structure, and it never would have worked, right? But then the second part of the documentary goes more into, at least the beginning part of it, goes more into Scottie Pippen and his life and in his career. And I'm not going to pretend to know everything about these Bulls teams and about Scottie Pippen and about Michael Jordan. And so I was surprised to find out that he was a manager at Central Arkansas and then became a really good player and then became a draft pick. I knew that he came from a small school, but I didn't know that he showed up as a manager and earned a scholarship and then, had a growth spurt and things like that. And it really struck me. I mean, obviously, I know about Scottie Pippen's game, but just to see it in this context, it really struck me how much of a 2020 type player he really was playing back in the 90s, someone that had incredible versatility and athleticism, a great defender, someone that can, protect the rim. There's lots of scenes of him blocking shots and getting steals and things like that. And really the only thing, and that would have, been corrected in 2020, would have been the jump shot, being a little bit more consistent from the outside and, prioritizing three-point shooting a little bit more. But he was not only a perfect fit for that team and because of the versatility that he provided, but really a perfect fit on any team, and especially now in 2020, he would be a supermax, highly, highly coveted player now. now in 2020. Now, having said that, I bring up the money and I bring up the Supermax thing because it goes over the, how underpaid Scottie Pippen was. And when that came up, I thought, well, why would he be underpaid? Is there a salary structure that I'm missing? He was a high draft pick. It's not like he's a guy that they got in the second round and was underpaid. Well, what ended up happening was he signed this contract extension for 7 years, $18 million. At the time that he signed that, it wasn't an awful deal, and he wanted the long-term financial security. He didn't want to get hurt and only come out of the league with a couple $1 million. He wanted to take care of his family, and so he wanted that long-term financial security. But pretty much right after he signed that contract extension, things increased with the salary cap, and player salaries in general went up exponentially to the point where I think MJ was making over $30 million a couple years later. And that was definitely a source of frustration for Scottie, and he wanted to go to ownership. He wanted to go to management and say, hey, can we restructure this? I'm one of the best players in the league, and I'm being paid like the 150th best player in the league. Is there anything that we can do about this? And that in that time, Bulls management was basically of the opinion that once you sign the contract, that's it. Like, don't come back to me. Don't renegotiate. It's not going to happen. And in an interesting little tidbit, the owner told Scottie Pippen not to sign the contract when he signed it. He said, this isn't a fair deal. You're going to be worth more in a couple of years. Don't sign it. And Scottie signed it anyway. And that, brought up even more tensions that kind of set up the third part of the documentary now moving forward. And that is that Scottie Pippen just wasn't happy anymore in Chicago going into what would end up being their 6th championship season, this Last Dance season. He had a foot injury that he had surgery on and should have been rehabbing over the summer, but he chose to have surgery late, so he missed the first couple of months of the season. And then this part of the documentary ends basically with Scottie requesting a trade in the middle of this season because he just doesn't want to be in Chicago anymore. There's been reports that he was going to be traded and just doesn't feel welcome anymore, does not have a great relationship at all with Jerry Krause, and at the end of the day, just decides that he wants to be elsewhere, and that's kind of where things leave off, and we're going to kind of see where things go from there. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to mention as well is one other storyline that they went through with MJ was the foot injury that he had early on in his career, and it's one of the biggest what ifs, of the NBA history, sports history really, is how cavalier he was about his injury recovery. And the fact that he wanted to play so badly, and that is something that he gets praised for all the time, and rightly so, as an incredible competitor and someone that wants to continue to work and work and work all the time. But when he was recovering from that foot injury early in his career, he very easily could have ended his career, significantly hampered it, based off the way that he was coming back from that injury and playing 5-on-5 without the Bulls even knowing it. I was not fully aware that was the situation. I knew that he had this foot injury early in his career, and I knew that he wanted to play and things like that, but I didn't realize the minutes restriction thing, the 14 minutes. I didn't realize, how much he pushed really just for that small compromise. I didn't realize how much he was playing without the Bulls knowing about it, and how dangerous that was for his career in the long term. And it's crazy to think about what the NBA would look like, in the 90s or even now, had he pushed it too far and hurt his foot, and the career of Michael Jordan could have never even happened, and this documentary wouldn't even be happening. Lots and lots of different things to consider there that very, very easily and realistically could have happened just based off the way that he tried to recover from that injury. Overall thoughts on the documentary, I think from, where my own expectations were at, it's reached and exceeded pretty much all those. The amount of people that they interviewed for this is incredible, and the amount of people that were interviewed just in these first 2 episodes, it's kind of crazy how much they put into this and how much they're cutting in and out and things like that. I'm hoping to see a little bit more of the actual footage like they showed in the locker room and stuff. It was kind of cool to see these people as more like, they're just real life people. And so I'm interested to see a little bit more of that kind of behind the scenes footage moving forward and not as many interviews because a lot of people have some kind of idea of the context around the situation, and I'm kind of looking for more like behind the scenes type stuff out of this. Maybe that's the direction they'll go. I don't know. The only criticism that I would have to this point, and maybe it's just not the structure they wanted to go with, but the jumping around from timeline to timeline, like when they show the scene and they rewind it to a different point in time, that can make it a little bit tough to follow when you're jumping around all these different things and going back to his college days and then going back to 97. And I guess they want to connect, the themes of that final season to the themes of Jordan's career and things like that. But I just personally, I think it could be a little bit difficult to follow for some people, all the jumping around timeline wise. But overall, I'm having a great time watching it. I'm looking forward to it every Sunday, and I'm looking forward to making these videos as well. But yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.